This year, HAST applications close on the 24th of July. If you're watching this well after that date, everything I'm about to go through will still apply for future years because what schools are actually looking for in an application doesn't really change from year to year. Only the exact dates move around slightly, or the application portfolio itself may vary as well. So I wanted to put together something that goes through what I actually am looking for when a parent or family will ask me whether or if their child is ready to apply. I think this is a decision a lot of parents end up making based on instincts rather than evidence, and that's understandable given how little time there usually is before any application date closes for this exam. For anyone who isn't familiar, this is the exam students sit if they want to transfer into a selective high school between years 8 to 11 after missing the original year 7 entry. It's another pathway that I went through the process myself. I transferred from Penrith High School to Girraween High School, and it actually took me 3 attempts before it worked in year 10 for year 11 entry. So I've sat on both sides for this. As a student who went through it more than once, now as someone who's coached students for more than 10 years. Some schools will not have the HAST exam, they'll have the EduTest exam, which is typically done by the very top selective high schools like James Roos, Baulkham Hills, North Sydney Boys, etc. Schools that have the HAST exam are still quite good, but they usually include schools like Helston, Girraween, Hornsby, Penrith, Caringbah, Sydney Tech, etc. While some schools will have neither exam and may have their own custom exam like Normalhurst or Sydney Boys. Regardless of the exam, the application process remains similar and they all follow this end date. I won't be covering why students want to move. Perhaps they're in a partial selective school and want to join a fully selective high school before year 10 ends. Maybe they were like me and wanted to get into a higher ranked selective high school at the time that was closer to home. Or what I've been seeing a lot recently is some students attend private high schools and they actually want to move to selective to save money. Or perhaps they're top students from normal public schools who are looking to prove themselves and get an edge when they head into HSC. The first thing I think most families get wrong is almost all of their attention is on the exam itself and treating the school report and the supporting documentation as a secondary detail that's not as important. In reality, I'll argue the report and the supporting documentation matters nearly just as much. And in some cases more, especially when students are performing really well in the exam and schools have to differentiate between one student and the next. A strong exam result sitting next to a weak report is, in my experience, a harder application to make a case for than a slightly lower exam result backed by a report that has been consistently solid. Many schools will ask this one question in the interview for all shortlisted candidates. The standard at our school is much higher than the one you attend at the moment. How would you be able to adapt to our standard and level? The best response the student can really say to this is, I have gotten A's and B's across all of my reports. I'm ready for this challenge. You can't really convincingly say you're ready for a new challenge and want to get into a school that's much higher ranked if your reports are below average or just average at a much lower ranked school. The reason for that is fairly simple once you think about it. The exam tells a school what a student can do on a particular day. That is extremely vital and it's the biggest differentiator between students. However, the reports will tell them whether that student has actually been doing long-term, term after term, report after report, subject after subject, not just the ones they enjoy over a period of time. To make that a bit more concrete, I'll provide an example. Say you're a student, let's call her Mia. Her reports show a fairly consistent pattern, mostly A's, a handful of B's, and nothing below a B in any subject, including the ones she's probably less interested in, like music. Or that pattern holds true across all 3 reports that she needs to submit. There isn't a report in that stack that raises a question for whoever's reading it, and that consistency is, and I think exactly what these schools are looking for. Now take a different student. We'll call him Ryan. Ryan is generally strong in maths. He's number 1 in the grade. There's no argument there. But his English sits at a C, and his visual arts has actually dropped to a D in his last 2 reports. I want to be clear, Ryan isn't a weak student. He's number one in the grade in maths, and other subjects he's getting A's. However, there's a specific and fairly visible gap, and it's a more significant gap than it might first appear, because HAST exams test reading and written expression directly. So a C in English isn't just a general soft spot sitting somewhere on the one page. It's sitting right on top of one of the actual skills being examined. It's very difficult to do well in the reading HAST exam if the reading results in school is actually pretty average. If I was looking at Ryan's report, I wouldn't say don't apply though. The second point, and I think this is one families underestimate the most, is that a single strong report doesn't tell a school very much on its own. What they're looking for is a pattern across more than one reporting period. And that has a practical time and consequence that a lot of families don't really consider until it's almost too late to do anything about it. If your child's in year 7, aiming for year 8 entry, applications generally will open up in June, applications close in July, and the exam is in August. So you'll have your half-yearly year 7 report, which means by the time the application is actually due, there are often 1 or 2 school reports or even 3 reports that you have to provide to the school, depending on the school that you're aiming for. That's a fairly narrow window to demonstrate any kind of consistent pattern, considering that child in year 7 is only being in year 7 or in high school for about half a year. So as a result, the application will be asking students to also submit their primary school reports as well. Every report your child brings home from between now and the point they apply becomes part of what a school will eventually read, whether that feels like it matters at the time or not. There are a couple of things that quietly sit underneath all of this, and I don't think get talked about enough either. One is teacher comments on each of those reports. They actually get read properly, and they're not just filler at the bottom of a page. A generic line like a satisfactory student who completes work on time tells a school very little. A comment that names something specific, that a student contributes strong ideas in discussions or takes initiative and others don't, carries a lot more weight because it suggests the teacher generally knows what the student is like, as opposed to the just guessing and having a hazard of an assumption. It's also the same with any negative things that the teachers will point out. Let's say that they say that the student is not receptive to feedback, or they're not doing their homework on time, or they sometimes do it but not consistently doing it. This will be factored in for certain students as well. Some schools more than others, of course, too. The other is NAPLAN, which schools often use as an external benchmark alongside the report themselves. If a report shows consistent A's and B's, but NAPLAN comes in well below what you expect, the gap tends to get noticed simply because the two pieces of evidence aren't telling the same story. Although honestly, NAPLAN is pretty easy in comparison to the HAST exam. So if the student struggles with it, selective high school applications in year 8 to 11, especially for HAST or NG test, probably won't be a fit anyway. In year 11 entry, so when they do the test in year 10, schools will ask for 2 NAPLAN reports, being in year 7 and in year 9. But in other grades beside that, years 7, 8, or 9, they generally will just ask for the 1, but remember to look at the exact school requirements first and not assume is it the same for all. Now, there's also a few patterns I keep seeing coming up almost every single intake, year after year, and I think they're worth mentioning directly too. The first is applying off the back of one particular good semester and assuming that's the entire picture. Every student has a stronger report and sometimes a weaker report. One report on its own doesn't tell a school much about who the student is consistently. So if you're looking to apply for this year and you're not in year 10 and have time, make sure to turn this around. If you have one great report, one bad report, and one average report, can you make sure your next 2 or 3 reports are super strong so you're setting yourself up for success? Don't make it this roller coaster of a marking grade system. You know what you have to do. And if you're not sure what your report should look like, I also have videos on our YouTube channel as well as on our brand new website all around our guides. The second is leaving preparation too late. HAST isn't something that responds well to being crammed in the final couple of weeks or days. And honestly, most of the families who come to me in this window are already behind. I'm pretty transparent and I tell them, how can we cram 1 year of content in 1 month? It's very hard. Even if we do multiple classes in a week, It's up to the student in terms of how much they can retain. We can try our best with the time we have left, but if we didn't have to rush it, the knowledge will be retained even better and it will be even more efficient. The students who tend to do well have been building things up like abstract reasoning over multiple months, not just days and just doing it over a few days, because it's generally a different kind of thinking to what's taught day to day in regular classroom. They don't teach abstract reasoning and some of these other question types in school. The students who have been with us usually get a lot of success after about a year or about 2 years, so we can break down a lot of the theory and work on the basics. It really depends on their starting point and how much work they put in throughout this entire journey. That links back to the Year 6 selective exam, where there are students who start preparing for that Year 6 exam when they're in Year 2 or Year 3, and they prepare for 3 years for that. But for some reason, students and families for HAST or for EduTest will assume that they can cram it last minute in a month or two. It's not really computing, and I don't think it really makes much sense there. And the third and final reason, and I think this is worth correcting and confirming directly, is assuming HAST is only for students who are struggling where they currently are. It's not really accurate. A lot of the students I work with the HAST transfers are currently doing perfectly fine at their current school. They're not falling behind, and they're looking for an environment that's more appropriately challenging for where they're at. So I wouldn't rule your child out just because of this, and if they feel like things are okay now, because if things are doing okay and being properly challenged, then it might not actually equate to the same thing. If they're struggling in their school and they really want to get into a much better ranked school, well, can we make this be reflected in terms of the reports and the extracurricular and the academic competitions? All of this will play a major factor. The one trait that I see with all students that actually make it in versus students who do not make it in is that students have to be the ones who really, really want it. When it's just the teacher or one of the parents or even me trying to convince them, it doesn't work at all. No. An example is that for the last few months, we've actually been helping a student preparing for the HAST exam in both reading and writing. They go to a really low ranked school and have flagged with them already that they need to be doing what they are required to do, otherwise they won't improve at a fast enough pace. They don't finish the homework, they occasionally use AI to cut corners, and they're very weak in their school reports. At this point, I've just told the parents there isn't much more that we can kind of do if he doesn't want to put in the effort himself. Every time I step in, he will say, hey, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this, but after once or twice, we just went to the point where we just have to discontinue. We can teach you all the theory and give you all the tools necessary to succeed. We've helped students do this in the last 10 years. Students who are not ambitious enough themselves will not be putting in the work that's necessary to do that though. And unfortunately, that student in that example was exactly the case. I actually go into a lot of depth on this on our website with real report examples laid out side by side, the different grading systems school use and how comments and NAPLAN scores are factored in, academic achievements, how that's catered into it as well as extracurricular. If you wanted to go through that properly, it's linked below in the description. If you want to get a quicker sense of where your child stands, there's a short readiness quiz on the site as well. We have made a brand new website, and the quiz goes through exactly what schools are looking for and gives you an indication based on your exact situation. It tells you how good your application is based on your supporting documentation or whether you have areas to improve, especially if you have more years to come. It only takes a few minutes and it's completely free, which is also in the description down below as well. I've spent a lot of time in building this, and I would really appreciate your feedback with it as well. Constantly tweaking and testing it, but I think it's a really good tool that anyone can use to benefit themselves. I think the broader point that I'm trying to make, and probably the thing I want parents to really take away from this video, is that the HAST exam or the application to transfer in years 8 to 11 isn't a decision you can make in the final week based on a gut feeling about the exam. It's a decision that's been quietly shaped by every report that's come back home, as well as the rest of the documentation required. This year, that window closes on the 24th of July, and if you're watching this in a different year, check the current dates on the department's website and the specific school's website. But the substance of what I've gone through here doesn't really change from one intake to the next. If you enjoyed this type of video, let me know down in the comments below. If you wanted me to make more videos on this topic or something else, let me know as well. I have a pretty big backlog of videos and topics that I want to cover. I just need to find some more time. Please like, comment, and subscribe. The more comments that I have, I read everything. I try to cater my videos based on that as well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.